Ever since the dawn of live-action movies, the industry has always had a special place for creatures and monsters. Especially in the fantasy, sci-fi, and horror genres, there have been an abundance of creatures that have come from mythological lore, nightmarish stuff, and deranged imaginations of geniuses. As far as creatures in fantasy movies are concerned, there have been both the good and evil, and they have often become almost synonymous with the films or the franchises. Such has been their popularity. In this video, we've attempted to bring you some of the most spectacular-looking creatures from fantasy movies, and we'll try to cover as many franchises and movies as we can. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. The Basilisk from Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, 2002. The Harry Potter franchise has delivered some incredible creatures over the years, some of them more intimidating and some friendly. The Basilisk, however, is easily among the most terrifying creatures that appeared in the movie series, and this giant serpent, also known as the King of Serpents, first appeared in Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. This magical beast was bred by dark wizards, and the first one to ever breed a basilisk was Herpo the Fowl, who hatched a chicken egg beneath a toad to accomplish the result. The breeding was banned during the medieval times, and this regulation never really changed. What makes the creature so terrifying is the fact that it can kill simply if someone stares directly into its eye. Even if someone looked at a basilisk indirectly, they would be petrified, and the spiders could sense their presence and consider them as their mortal enemies. The basilisk is infamously known as the wizard killer because the creature cannot be tamed and is extremely powerful. A parselmouth, or someone who speaks the language of serpents, can communicate with the creature and bring it under their influence. But even then, the obedience is not guaranteed. The basilisk can grow up to almost 50 feet in length, and it has dark green scales with a light green underbelly. The overall appearance is like that of a giant snake, and the male creatures also have a single scarlet plume on its head. These creatures also have horns on their heads, and their venomous fangs are also one of their deadly weapons. They live up to 900 years, and this can be further increased if they can be put into a deep sleep that prevents them from aging, as is the case of Salazar Slytherin's basilisk. Our deep-rooted fear for these mighty creatures made us place this one at the top of our list, and we believe that the fellow Potterheads would agree. The Pale Man from Pan's Labyrinth, 2006. For anyone who has watched the Spanish dark fantasy drama Pan's Labyrinth, the Pale Man will remain an unforgettable experience. This pale-skinned humanoid monster has a terrifying appearance, and his nature isn't any better as he eats children as a hobby. He is a vile and hideous monster who has pale, elastic skin and holds his eyeballs in the palms of his hands. It's indicated that he doesn't have a trace of humanity because even when the children begged for mercy, he was relentless. The Pale Man eats his victims entirely, and the story introduces him when Ophelia's quest to prove her worthiness leads her to the lair of this legendary creature. She has to retrieve a dagger from the Pale Man's lair after securing the key, and the only help that she has are the pet fairies who serve as a guide. When Ophelia first reaches the Pale Man's lair, the creature is sleeping in his chair, and Ophelia gets the job done. However, she makes a crucial mistake when she eats a couple of juicy grapes from the Pale Man's table, even though the fairies warned her not to do so. The Pale Man then wakes up, and he immediately goes after Ophelia. 2 among the 3 fairies protecting her are devoured instantly, and the remaining fairy and Ophelia barely manage to escape with their lives. It can be assumed that the Pale Man goes back to his slumber as the creature is only awakened when someone eats from his table or irks him. The director, Guillermo del Toro, went through a lot of changes to finally put together the perfect version of the Pale Man, and the creature truly looks spectacular in the movie. The Nozghoul from the Lord of the Rings trilogy, 2001 to 2003. The Lord of the Rings franchise has so many creatures that there can be an entire video to explore them all. The Nozghoul, however, also known as the Black Riders, were among the most dreaded creatures in this fantasy world. They were ring servants of the Dark Lord Sauron in Middle-earth, and their terrifying presence was observed throughout the Second and Third Ages. It all started with the 19 Rings of Power that were forged in Eregion by Celebrimbor. Sauron got hold of 16 of them, and he gave 9 of them to the lords and warriors and corrupted them all. Sauron's one ring dominated them all, and with time, their bodies turned into wraiths. These became known as the Nozghoul and were the primary servants of Sauron. They faded into the shadows when Sauron was defeated, but when the Dark Lord returned, so did the Nozghoul. These creatures appeared as shadowy men hidden away by black hoods and cloaks that reached their boots. Without these cloaks, the Nozghoul were completely invisible, except to the wearer of the One Ring. What made the Nozghoul so powerful was their terrifying presence and the impact that they had on living beings, who were mortified of their presence. Even when one couldn't see the Nozghoul, their presence could be felt, and people would experience a sense of dread. The Nozghoul also wielded weapons like steel swords and the knife of the Witch King, which injured Frodo. Only special weapons could do any real damage, and they were almost invincible. Someone like the mighty Sauron required adequately powerful allies and servants, and the Nozghoul were the perfect fit among his forces. Centaurs from the Chronicles of Narnia. The Chronicles of Narnia is an important name in the world of fantasy movies, and centaurs are one of the most remarkable creatures among many that appear in the franchise. These creatures are extremely intelligent and loyal, and they are known for their honor in the world of Narnia. The centaurs even have a unique appearance, which makes them look like a regular human from the abdomen to the head, while the rest of their body is like that of a horse. They're often referred to as beautiful giants, and all centaurs are great warriors who have fought for Narnia and Aslan in every major battle. These creatures live a long life, and some even live up to 200 years old. Among their special abilities, the centaurs can look into the future, and their fighting skills are remarkable. Their diet mostly consists of apples, herbs, wine, and cheese, and they have 2 stomachs, one of a human and one of a horse. Because of this unique physical characteristic, they need to eat quite a lot. Riding a centaur is considered to be a great honor, and very few people have been privileged enough to do so. These respected creatures are regarded highly in all of Narnia, and it's interesting to note that while female centaurs were not mentioned in the books, they did feature in the Disney adaptation.
The whole life.
The Erron from Avatar, 2009. Avatar is possibly among the best fantasy drama movies ever made, and it presented a world like we've never seen before. Among the many creatures and entities in the distant world of Pandora were these unique creatures known as the Erron, or the mountain banshees. These creatures were usually found roosting on the sides of cliffs on the Hallelujah Mountains, and several Na'vi clans made use of these creatures in various ways. The primary usage of the Erron was for transportation purposes, and they were also used to hunt from the air or to participate in warfare. These creatures have been a part of their culture for thousands of years, and they've been taming the Erron for a very long time. However, it was quite a challenging task to tame an Erron, and often very dangerous as well. These creatures bonded with only one Na'vi in its lifetime, and the rider could bond with a new one if the previous one died. It was widely believed that an Erron also chose its warrior to bond with, and most others would fly away when pursued. Different clans had different rituals featuring this creature, but it played an important part in the cultures of all Na'vi clans. The creature was reptilian in appearance, and the bird-like metabolism generated a lot of head, which required a cooling system to prevent it from overheating. It also had a special lung to power its unique biology, and its hollow bones helped in its flight. The limbs were modified into 2 wings, and they also had sharp claws to grab onto things. These social creatures were instrumental in the war against humans, and we hope to see more of them in the upcoming Avatar movie as well. Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon, 2010. How to Train Your Dragon was almost an adorable fantasy movie series, and Toothless the dragon was the heart of the narrative. Toothless happened to be the only Night Fury in the franchise, and the physical appearance of this creature changed slightly over the movies. He possessed 2 pair of wings, one for a vertical takeoff and the other for gliding. He also had 2 natural tail fins at the end of his tail, and this helped in the steering and stability of the creature. Perhaps the most defining feature of Toothless was his ability to retract his teeth into his gums, which also got him the name. Among all the known dragons, Toothless was the most intelligent and even had a sense of humor. He was protective of his human friend and was a curious creature who took some time to get used to Hiccup and understand his words and actions. There were times when Toothless showed signs of attitude, and he wasn't intimidated easily. The relationship that he developed with Hiccup was remarkable, and the creature could die for his friend. Such was his nature. Aside from his intelligence and smart communication skills, Toothless was also extremely fast and agile, and his dive-bombing techniques could take out the biggest of dragons, such as the Red Death in the movie. For his size, Toothless was also quite a strong dragon, and this was backed up by his stamina and endurance. Together with all his firepower and plasma blast, Toothless was a force to reckon with, and the franchise wouldn't have been the same without his presence. Pita from Coco, 2017. The 2017 Pixar film Coco won a few hearts with its adorable storyline, and Pita was easily one of the highlights of the movie. This unique creature was an Alabria, which were colorful spirit inhabitants in the land of the dead. Pita used to be Mama Imelda's pet Maine Coon cat when she was alive, and in her afterlife, she served as her Alabria spirit guide. This creature looked like a cross between a large cat-like species, such as a tiger or a jaguar, and many other animals. Her features included teal ram horns, an iguana-like tail, and she had a body shape that was lean with a wooden texture. She had red wings, and her underbelly was orange, and together with her aqua-colored talons, she had a rather colorful appearance. The production design of Coco is as good as it gets, and it brought to life the land of the dead. Overall, not only did Pita look stunning, but she was also a fantastic addition to the story because of her formidable nature that contrasted with Miguel's goofy guardian Dante. Even though she had a bright and colorful presence, she was still quite intimidating, and Pita had a fierce and unwavering attitude that was hard to match. At the end of the movie, she was shown in her living form accompanying Dante, and it was just about the perfect ending that you expect from Pixar movies. Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty, 1959. In the Walt Disney Productions animated film Sleeping Beauty, Maleficent was the primary antagonist, and this character was based on the evil fairy godmother in Charles Perrault's original fairy tale. She was depicted as more of a femme fatale, and Maleficent was a self-proclaimed mistress of evil. However, when the character was revisited in the 2014 live-action movie, Angelina Jolie played a sympathetic version of Maleficent, who was largely misunderstood for safeguarding her domain from humans. As for Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty, we don't know if it would be fair to call an evil witch a creature, but she did have shape-shifting abilities, so we can't say for sure what her original form was like. Originally, she resembled a sinister green-skinned beauty who was designed as a giant vampire bat to strike fear among the audience. Eleanor Audley did a fine job as the voice actor, and Maleficent still remains one of the most menacing villains of all time. Aside from her shape-shifting abilities, Maleficent was also a master of spells, and it took 3 fairies to have a chance in stopping her. Even her curse could not be lifted by them and only be softened. We can't get over the scenes where she transforms into a dragon, and her vengeful and unforgiving nature in the 1959 animated movie will not be forgotten anytime soon. The Lord of Darkness from the movie Legend, 1985. The dark fantasy film Legend has achieved legendary status, and rightfully so. However, as much as we love the movie, we can't deny the importance of the main villain in the movie, the Lord of Darkness, aka the Dark Lord. Not much is known about his backstory, but it suggested that the world once used to be a place of permanent night, and this world was ruled by the Dark Lord and his minions. However, when light was born, he had to retreat beneath the earth. He lived in the big tree that also housed some terrifying beasts and creatures, and the only thing that was truly his weakness was light. The Lord of Darkness, played by Tim Curry in the film, planned to usher in the never-ending night one more time, but his plan to kill the 2 unicorns failed, and only one of them was killed. Later, his final plan was foiled by Jack, who dueled him and eventually stabbed him with a unicorn horn. The rays of the rising sun were also channeled onto him, and he was blasted into space where he exploded into stars. This evil yet charismatic villain was a sadist, and even his form was quite intimidating. He was quite huge, and his initial appearance showed him in dark blue skin and long and sharp leather claws with 2 giant black horns and sharp teeth. The Lord of Darkness was a master of illusion, apart from being extremely strong, and he could also shoot fireballs from his fingertips. His shape-shifting and teleportation abilities were notable as well, and it was possible that he was nearly immortal because even the final blow failed to destroy him permanently. Falkor from the Neverending Story, 1984. Not all creatures in fantasy movies have to be terrifying and ghastly to look at. Falkor, for instance, the star of the Neverending Story, is an absolutely adorable creature, and he is a luck dragon and also the first dragon in the series. He is an extremely wise and sophisticated creature from Fantasia, and he treasures each of his friendships. The only enemies that Falkor ever has are the ones who threaten his friends, or those who threaten Fantasia itself. This unique creature has an elongated body of 43 feet long, and the appearance is similar to that of a Chinese dragon. The body is covered in soft albino fur, and he has paws and a tail that are all elegantly shaped. His back is covered in pink and white scales, and his eyes are like rubies. Do not let his adorable appearance fool you, however, because Falkor can be quite a powerhouse and destroy his enemies if he has to. If you haven't watched The Neverending Story yet, make sure to check it out just for the sake of Falkor. The Kraken from Pirates of the Caribbean. Pirates of the Caribbean brought before us a fantasy world that we still haven't gotten over, and among all the creatures and monsters that have been portrayed in the series, the legendary sea monster Kraken is easily the most intimidating. This obedient leviathan preyed upon unsuspecting ships and mariners, and the appearance of the creature was like that of a giant squid. The Kraken had tentacles and was reportedly as big as 10 ships put together. Very few had ever seen the creature, and fewer still have remained alive after the experience to tell the story. This creepy monster was so massive that its tentacles could reach the top of the ship's main mast, and these tentacles also had huge suckers on them that were strong enough to pull the flesh away from the sailor's face. It brought more souls to serve Davy Jones' crew and served him to some extent. This demented pet of Davy Jones would attack ships that were marked with a black spot, which could only be removed by Davy Jones himself to call off the attack. The epic showdown between the Kraken and Jack Sparrow was one of the best moments of the film, and finally, the creature was killed, much to the shock of Davy Jones. Even Jack was filled with sympathy for the creature because it was the last of its kind, and was now reduced to a pile of rotting flesh and rubbery tentacles. Medusa from Clash of the Titans, 1981. Medusa has been a constant presence in the Clash of the Titans franchise, and she was one of the primary allies of Kraken. As far as the 1981 movie is concerned, Medusa's backstory was explored, and it was revealed that she used to be a priestess of Athena back in the day. After being seduced by the god Poseidon, they made love in her temple, which infuriated the goddess. She cursed Medusa by metamorphosing her into a gorgon, and Medusa was then banished into a temple of the underworld. She then created a reign of terror, where several men who came to her lair were slain courtesy of her archery skills, or simply by petrifying them. Finally, the demigod Perseus came to her hideout with the intention of beheading her, and using it to petrify the Kraken. Even with prior information from the Kraken, Medusa failed to stop Perseus and his 2 soldiers. In the final fight, his soldiers were defeated, but Perseus managed to behead Medusa with his sword. After her death, Medusa spilled corrosive blood, and finally, from her blood, 3 giant scorpions were created. Her head was later used to petrify the Kraken by throwing it into the sea, and it was a sorry end for the powerful creature. While the movie depictions of Medusa have varied with time, the original Greek myth always painted her as a monster from the beginning. Among all her on-screen appearances, however, we like the one in the 1981 Clash of the Titans the most. The Rancor from Return of the Jedi, 1983. The Rancor is a towering creature that every Star Wars fan is familiar with, and this reptilian beast walks on 2 stubby legs. It has 2 long arms that are disproportionate to its body, and it uses these arms to capture its prey. The armored skin of the Rancor is so tough that even the blaster bolts can be repelled quite easily. Although the appearance of these creatures is intimidating enough, it's not exactly vicious in nature, and the only problem is that the Rancors are prized trophies for crime lords and wealthy, amoral individuals. In the 1983 movie Return of the Jedi, Jabba the Hutt drops Luke Skywalker through a trap door so that he gets eaten by a Rancor, but Luke manages to kill the creature. Once Luke has slain the Rancor, Jabba has further plans to have him removed. The Star Wars franchise is no stranger to some remarkable creatures and aliens along the way, but there is something particularly disturbing about the Rancor that makes it one of the first ones to come to mind. Recently, Star Wars gave the Rancors a new weakness, where a certain frequency causes vertigo among them and knocks them out. This has significant implications on the Star Wars universe, and all the previous battles with these creatures can now be revisited in a different light. Winged monkeys from The Wizard of Oz, 1939. You wouldn't think of monkeys in the forests as a surprising addition to the creature list unless you check out the ones you see in The Wizard of Oz. These are jungle monkeys that have bird-like feathered wings, and they're quite intelligent and playful creatures that roam around and converse in English. According to the story, these winged monkeys are initially controlled by the Wicked Witch of the West, but later, the protagonist Dorothy Gale regains control of these creatures. They even help her by flying her to 2 different locations. Their role in the 1939 musical adaptation of the novel is considerably reduced, but they do have a creepy presence on screen that cannot be ignored. They do not have a speaking role and have no dialogues as a result, contrary to what we see in the novel. The winged monkeys in the movie are still intelligent enough to follow commands, and they abduct Dorothy and her dog Toto and leave the Scarecrow dismantled. Fortunately, the Tin Man and the Cowardly Lion are left intact, and they manage to put the Scarecrow back together and rescue Dorothy in due time. If you get a chance to witness this evergreen portrayal of unique fantasy creatures, do check out the movie at the earliest for some good old black and white fun, with some color thrown in too. Staypuff from Ghostbusters, 1984. The Staypuff, or the Marshmallow Man, is one of the most outrageous creatures that you come across in the Ghostbusters franchise. He appears as a giant lumbering monster, and his first appearance can be noted in the 1984 Ghostbuster film, where he was featured as a logo on a bag of marshmallows, and later as a physical manifestation and form of the apocalyptic Sumerian deity Gozer. Gozer was a shape-shifting god of destruction, and a Gozer-worshipping cult did the needful to summon the entity back and bring about chaos and destruction across the city. In an epic scene, Gozer appears as the Stay-Puffed Marshmallow Man and starts to destroy the city. Finally, after much deliberation, the entity is destroyed and Gozer is banished back to its dimension after the gateway is closed. It was a fun way to depict a fearsome monster, and never did we think that a Marshmallow Man would be capable of such large-scale destruction. Marvelous Verdict, a spectacular treat for the movies. The introduction of these fascinating creatures in the above-mentioned movies definitely adds to the charm of the narrative, and in most cases, they also play a crucial role in the story. Also, it's worth noting that the unique aspect of these creatures is not restricted to their special effects, but the way they are presented. Some, like the winged monkeys, have been created back in 1939, when it was all about practical effects, and some others, like the Kraken, have a lot more CGI involvement with a touch of modernity. Yet, they are all impressive in their way, and the creature lore in movies only got strengthened by their presence. Surely we have left out a lot of creatures because of the tricky task of picking only 15 for our list. Do tell us in the comments below about your favorite ones from our picks, and also tell us about some others that you feel deserve mention, maybe in a second video on this topic. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, and be safe. Thanks, everyone.